The function of breathing for purposes of making sound with the voice. Soon you will see a bit about it. Yeah, that's it. Okay. So, first a few words about why breathing is relevant and important to voice. One reason is the art of starting phonation. How to start a voice. We could do it in different ways. We could do it by hard or staccato and breathy so in a hard attack you have glottal adduction early and sound pressure comes late. So adduction is happening there, and then after a little while you start the subglottal pressure, and then you will have a hard attack because the vocal folds are closed and the phonation is starting. Okay, staccato, then adduction and subglottal pressure is started simultaneously. And in a breathy attack, then subglottal pressure starts and then adduction comes later. Okay? So, and this is of course an example of a synchronization of the activity of putting, of generating a subglottal pressure and closing your glottis for phonation. Okay. That is then why breathing is important to voice. That is what I'm talking about. Now the second reason is the tracheal pull, which is a mechanical link between the breathing and the voice. As you have heard, the lungs, the breathing apparatus is a rather big thing hanging in the skull, and it is having a certain mass. So they hang in the larynx, and if you are in an upright position, the lungs want to pull the larynx down, and that is called the tracheal pull. The tracheal pull is strong at high lung volumes when the diaphragm is far down in the trunk, and that is after deep inhalation that causes abdominal wall expansion and flanks to expand. The interesting thing with the tracheal pull is that it induces an abducting force. It wants to pull the larynx down, and according to Sundberg, 1964, it causes an opening of the glottis. It tends to open the glottis. And this means that it actually counteracts breath phonation. So breathing strategy can influence the voice. And the third reason is that the subglottal pressure is heavily influencing phonation. The result of the subglottal pressure in phonatory terms is huge, actually. So here we have the relationship between normalized subglottal pressure and the rate at which the airflow ceases in the flow pulse. And that is the way we determine vocal loudness. That is how to determine vocal loudness. Now, if we vary subglottal pressure, if we increase the glottal pressure, the closed phase, here we have subglottal pressure, here we have the closed phase of the vibratory cycle, and that increases quickly for low pressures and not at all for high pressures. The amplitude of the flow pulses also increases, and that has acoustical consequences also. The higher the pressure, the bigger the pulse. And the amplitude of the voice source fundamental, as Professor Satterov mentioned, increases also with the subglottal pressure. And finally, the spectrum balance is also heavily influenced by the subglottal pressure. So this varying subglottal pressure changes everything in the voice. Now I will talk about the breathing apparatus, reiterating some of what you heard Bob Satterov talk about. There are muscles, and there are two main muscle systems for expanding and compressing the lungs. One system is the external and internal intercostals. They run between the ribs, because costus is rib, and there are external and internal intercostals. And then we have another complete system for ventilating the lungs, and that is the diaphragm and the abdominal wall. The intercostal muscles, the external, they tend to lift the ribs and make the rib cage wider in volume. And the internal, they squeeze the rib cage. That means then external is good for inhalation and internal is good for exhalation. I can't help that, but that is just an effect as a sad fact. Okay, then we have the other system, which is the abdominal wall and the diaphragm. The abdominal wall is having a lot of muscles that catches the abdominal wall and brings it towards the back. And then that, of course, has the effect that the abdominal content is pushed upwards. It can't go down in the legs because there's no room there. So they must invade the rib cage. Okay, and the antagonist of the abdominal wall, that is the diaphragm. So the diaphragm is this double dome-shaped, two domes here, and it attaches to the bottom of the rib cage. So that means that it lowers the floor of the rib cage and therefore makes the volume bigger, so it's good for inhalation. Diaphragm is high in the front because this is where the rib cage ends in the front, and in the back it's far down. So it's not sitting as the floor of an elevator, it's more like at an angle. As you can see here, it is fastened to the rib cage, low here in the back and high up in the front. Some people say they cannot, nobody can command the contraction of the diaphragm. And that is a fake news. They are entirely wrong, and I would like you to experience this. The trick is very simple, and we do it every day. If you make your abdominal wall hard, you contract your diaphragm, and you contract also the abdominal wall muscles, and that makes the front hard. So as soon as you do that, you are willfully contracting your diaphragm. So never doubt about that anymore in the future. Okay. Yes, so why don't you do that? Inhale. Inhale and make your abdominal wall hard, and then pronounce a soft S sound. It is not difficult at all. It is not even an art. It is routine. So that is how it feels to contract your diaphragm. Okay. And if you have two shoes, you could also visualize it by laying on your back, because then if the abdominal wall shoe is going towards the ceiling, that means that the diaphragm did it. That is a proof of diaphragmatic contraction. Nobody else could do that in the body. Okay. Summary: muscles for breathing. We have the internal and external intercostals, and we have the diaphragm and abdominal wall. The diaphragm tends to lower the floor in the rib cage. Abdominal wall tends to raise the floor in the rib cage. Also, there is a gravitation if you are standing in a standing position. gravitation wants to push the abdominal content away from the rib cage, and if you're lying on your back, the opposite is actually the fact. Now, elasticity is also important. Maybe I may, you allow me, well, I don't ask you, please experience elasticity. You take, inhale deeply, close the airways. How do you close the airways? When you close the glottis, then you do this. Okay, so that is closing the glottis. Inhale deeply, close the glottis, and relax, and open the glottis. And then everybody, yeah, you exhale. Nobody will inhale under those conditions. Because, and it is not muscular activity, it is actually elasticity of the system that produces the exhalation. And then you can do the opposite also, because at low lung volumes the elasticity has the opposite effect. So exhale deeply, close the glottis, relax, and open the glottis, and everybody will inhale. You are right. Okay, so that is how that feels. Elasticity is a real force that contributes to subglottal pressure. And how do we measure subglottal pressure? Well, that is painfully simple. By means of water that poured into a U-shaped tape, here U-shaped tube. Put some water in it, and then put the pressure into one end, and then that water column will drop, and that will rise, and then the difference in the left and right water column is the measure of subglottal pressure. So the unit is that is centimeter of water column, centimeter H2O. Okay, so how big are the pressures produced by elasticity? Well, we have two sources. One is the rib cage, and one is the lung. And so the lungs always want to be smaller, but they are prevented from collapsing from the vacuum in which they are hanging. And the rib cage wants to be smaller when it has been expanded, and it wants to expand when it has been compressed. So the sum of the rib cage and lung elasticity is what we have to deal with. And then, as you see, it passes zero pressure. This is subglottal pressure in centimeters of water column, and this is overpressure, and this is under pressure. So here is a sucking force, and here is an exhalation force. But at somewhere below 50% of lung volume, we have the resting expiratory level. The resting expiratory level, a very relevant lung volume. So how does it feel to visit the resting expiratory level? I invite you to another experience, namely to inhale and then make an unvoiced, relaxed sigh, as if you were encountering something that is completely hopeless, like that. Then you arrive at the resting expiratory level. Yeah, that is what you do. So, we will return to that lovely lung volume in a little while, because it is interesting. Now, the subglottal pressure needed for a soft tone, I told you already that the subglottal pressure is the means by means of which we vary vocal loudness. Then if we want to produce a soft tone, we need a low subglottal pressure, and the elasticity pressure produced at high lung volume is far too high. So we need to recruit contraction of the inhalatory muscles under these conditions, that means that and then if you keep the tone going for a long time, you will consume air, so you will sink down on this curve lung volume will decrease, and that means at some point the elasticity pressure, the pressure produced by the elasticity equals the needed pressure for the pianissimo tone, and then you need to recruit the exhalatory muscles. Yeah. So here it is inhalare la voce, and here it is exhalare la voce, but I have never heard anybody talk about that. Okay. And if we, for a high pressure tone, then as in fortissimo, most of the demand on the respiratory system is to activate exhalatory muscles. Okay, elasticity force are affected by body posture, and we don't do this tonight here, but you could do it before going to bed. Then you make a relaxed sigh, and then you slump your position and open the glottis again, and then you will see if you will inhale or if you will exhale. Some of those two is certainly going to happen. Okay, so actually by manipulating, by changing the body posture, you will change the resting expiratory level. It doesn't sit at 40% or so constantly. It depends on how you are, what you're passing. Elasticity forces. The exhalatory are large at large lung volume, and inhalatory at small lung volumes, and zero at resting expiratory level. I just said that. Lung volume tends to affect the blood pressure, so sometimes you hear people who take a deep breath and then they speak rather loudly, and then they continue to speak, and it goes softer and softer and softer, because the elasticity contribution is sort of fading away, and they don't have the energy to keep this blood pressure. That is not likely to happen in singing. Here we need the singer needs to be a master, having complete command over this blood pressure, no matter what the lung volume is. Okay, and then, as I mentioned, gravity is also a force that is affecting blood pressure. In upright position, the abdominal content wants to travel south towards the floor, and that is an inhalation force, and then in supine position, the opposite effect occurs. Now, about lung volumes. Big young people have lots of air in their lungs, and they could inhale a great amount of air. But as they grow older, the lung volume, the vital capacity, the maximum lung volume that you could exhale and inhale decreases. And the males tend to have larger lung volumes than females. So the young, tall guy is likely to have a very high lung volume capacity, and an old, short female, very small. Okay, let's look at lung volumes a bit more. This is when you take, here we have lung volume and here we have time. So this is how much you could, this subject could inhale and then exhale. So that is what is called the vital capacity, And then the interesting thing is, with the REL, I promise to return to that concept. The REL is the blue dashed line here, and this is peaceful breathing. And in peaceful breathing, inhalation is active, exhalation is passive. Okay? Inhalation active, exhalation is passive. Exhalation is driven by elasticity. Okay, so that is what you see. How does it feel to phonate at lung volume below REL? Well, visit your resting expiratory level once before. Take a deep breath, a relaxed, hopeless sigh, and then start talking without inhalation. And you feel it's not comfortable. We don't need lung to use lung volumes below resting expiratory level. We want to have the lungs above, the lung volume above resting expiratory level. Yeah, this is an example of it. It is the lung volume range used by a singer who meets a song he never saw before. And you could see that the range here goes far below the red dash, which is the rel. So he couldn't have no idea how long the phrases were and how much air the tones were going to take. So he ended up with rather low lung volumes every now and then. But as he rehearsed the piece, he avoided singing with lung volumes under red, below red. Okay, very fine. Watson and Hickson published that in 1996. Initiation lung volumes and termination lung volumes are relevant measures in the breathing. Now also, composers sometimes want phrases to be very long, and that means that you need a lot of air in your lungs to perform these, to sing these lines, phrases, and you are not supposed to take a breath. So that means that in classically trained singers, we find very wide lung volume range, very large lung volume range, meaning then that as in classical singing, you need to deal with quite big changes of elasticity forces. But when you speak, you have a very small variation, a very small range of lung volume, and there the elasticity forces are not at all so big and so variable. Now let me talk about subglottal pressure that I mentioned before. How does it feel to vary subglottal pressure? Then I would like to invite the audience to pronounce an S sound that varies between loud and soft. You do that by varying subglottal pressure, and of course you feel it in your body. So measuring subglottal pressure is, you could imagine that you need to drill a little hole in the throat and put a pressure transducer into the trachea, but that is not necessary. Fortunately, the nice thing is that you could simply measure the oral pressure during P occlusion, then because the oral pressure during P occlusion is almost exactly the same as the tracheal pressure. Okay, so that is nice. Now let's revert to the fact that we vary vocal loudness with subglottal pressure. Subglottal pressure here, sound pressure there, loudness of the sound. And you could see that this is a middle tone by an untrained voice, and then we could add a few more tones, high pitch and low pitch, and in most people this is what you get. You get a very strong correlation between subglottal pressure and sound pressure level, as long as you keep the same vowel. So then we could approximate this dependence with a straight line, and we could ask how expensive are the decibels. In this man, a 10 centimeter watercolor there produced about 78 decibels at 0.3 meters distance. And how much did he gain from doubling subglottal pressure? Well, that was about from 10 to 20 centimeters in doubling of subglottal pressure. Then he gained about 10 decibels. And these typical values, this is what you find in most. Doubling of subglottal pressure is about 10 decibels, or a bit less, or a bit more, and 10 centimeters of water column produces about between 75 and 80 decibels at 30 centimeters from the mouth. Okay, dramatic and lyric sopranos use quite different subglottal pressure. So this is measurement average of 5 dramatic sopranos and 5 lyric sopranos. What do we have? We have subglottal pressure there in centimeters of water column, and we have the pitch here for 40 Hertz is about here. The blue ones are lyric and the red ones are dramatic. The upper line is of course the loudest tones that they could produce, and the dashed is the softest. The interesting thing is that, as I said, the lyric and dramatic sopranos use different subglottal pressure. The dramatic sopranos use higher subglottal pressure, and also they are substantially louder than the lyric sopranos when they are singing as soft as they can, or as loudly as they can. Subglottal pressure in nonsense speech. Säga dihydare igen, säga bahadare, well, I don't care to vary subglottal pressure in nonsense speech. But in dramatic speech, there is a lot of variation. So let me see if I could get yeah, exactly. So that was reading my thoughts. So, but let's look at this is what I said. And I had a pressure transducer in the trachea, so we could measure continuously the subglottal pressure during reading, and this was a sort of communicative speech. And you could see that there, the subglottal pressure went up to 15 centimeters of water column in some syllables, and down to 7 centimeters half of the subglottal pressure in the softer parts. So in communicative speech, you vary subglottal pressure quite dramatically. But what about singer? Well, if you have subito forte, subito piano, you have a constant pitch, and you have loud and soft alternating, and then that is driven by subglottal pressure. So subglottal pressure is needs to be high for the loud tones and soft for the soft tones. So that is boring. So let me go to the more dramatic version, and this is then singing octave ascending, descending octave interval. And if you please could you disregard the figures that come from an artifact. We had the impression that you could turn the right way. It was in the esophagus, and it was in contact with the aorta. So it was a living subject, so it has his heart running. Anyway, what you see, which is important, is that the high note is produced with high pressure. The low note is produced with low pressure. So you have, yeah, you have to give higher pressure for the higher note. Let's look at this then. This is a dominant, is tonic up and dominant seventh down. And then this is the pitch pattern, and this is the subglottal pressure used for the different tones. So you see that when singing this, you need to serve the voice with an optimized trailer subglottal pressure that differs between the notes. Yeah, and that is entire. This is specific to singing. I don't think that anything similar occurs in speech. Yeah, that is the loudness. And here you see a staccato coloratura, and so on. And here you see that the pressure in the respiratory system is up, making an increase, one, increase, decrease, per 16th note. So that is a quite demanding task for the breathing system. That is it. It could also be interesting to compare different singing techniques. This is then an alternatively rising and falling octave interval by two singers, and you could see that they use approximately the same degree of subglottal pressures and lung volumes there, but the gastric pressure, the pressure in the stomach, is hugely bigger in singer B than in singer A, and that is because the singer A doesn't contract his diaphragm at all, while the other was doing that constantly. And that is two techniques of singing. Some people have that technique of producing high pressures with a lot of contraction of the abdominal wall and a co-contraction, some simultaneous contraction of the diaphragm at the same time. Yes, but breathing and singing are quite different with respect to control of subglottal pressure. Nonsense speech, nothing happens in the subglottal pressure, and in singing it is very varied and systematically varied. You remember I showed you this, the difference in the pressure used by sopranos, lyric and dramatic sopranos, and let's look at some other classifications of singers. Here you have the various pressures. So look at countertenors, they go to about 20-25 centimeters of water column, baritones perhaps to 50, and belting is up to 50, dramatic soprano 40, something like that. It varies hugely between voice classifications and vocal technique. Okay, and what about clarinet and saxophone blowers, just for comparison? Well, the funny thing is that the voice, the higher the pitch, the higher the pressure. In saxophone and clarinet, the higher the pitch, the lower the pressure. So that may be a complication if you have a student who is a good clarinet player who wants to sing. And if you have an oboe player that wants to sing, you probably have to remind him that the pressure is needed for oboe playing about 120 centimeters of water column for high pitch loud. Is about 10 times too high for singing. So it is remarkable how different the demands on the breathing systems are. We shouldn't mention trumpet players. They are fortissimo high note, in trumpet player was measured to be 250 centimeters of water column. That's taller than me. That and well above both systolic and diastolic sound. Okay. Yeah, but the interesting thing is that all people who are who need to vary subglottal pressure systematically, they could talk about support, and that may be something that belongs to the significance of the rather vague term breath support. Lung volume tends to affect phonation. As I mentioned, the tracheal bulb is trying to abduct the folds, and when you look at high lung volume phonations in untrained subjects, you get big pulses, and towards the end of the phrase with low lung volumes, the pulses tend to be much smaller. And this is more towards hyperfunctional phonation, and this is more towards non-hyperfunctional phonation, flow phonation. So in untrained voices, there are typically greater pulses, as I just showed, at high lung volumes than at low lung volumes, but singers have no difference. And this goes to a fascinating aspect, I think. Should you train voices with descending melodic lines or ascending melodic lines? Well, that has some bearings. because lung volumes always go down as you sing the phrase, and then that means if you have descending, the high pitches are produced with high lung volumes, while the tracheal pull is greater and the help to avoid breath phonation is bigger. So here the descending high pitches with high lung volumes, and then so that may be good for people who tend to have breath phonation at high pitches, while the ascending pitch, then the high note arrives at low lung volumes, so that could be good for breathy voices who have too much breath in the voice. Yep, and it also affects larynx height, of course, and that is so at high lung volumes the larynx tends to be lower, and at low larynx, at low volumes the larynx tends to be higher. So that is also something that could be used in pedagogical means. Now, that was about what I would like to say, and thank you for your attention.